Cheers.
Boom.
Cheers. What's going on, everybody? It is the second ever episode of the IOST podcast. I'm sitting here with two of my favorite people, Mike Finch and Dmitry Chesnikov. Guys, how are we doing today?
Oh, man, it's amazing. Beautiful weather in Pittsburgh. It's great.
As always, it's always sunny and nice in Pittsburgh. It's never gray.
We got Dmitry with a mic this time so that he doesn't have to sound like he's a million miles away from us,
Yeah.
and he can look at me in the eyes.
I'm going to talk into the mic now.
There you go. Good.
That was a big comment. Somebody got like 4 likes on shitting on you for
who are
not
those
talking in the
people?
mic. We will find them.
We appreciate everybody commenting on the last YouTube video. It is going to be the RSS feed from SoundCloud is actually going to be integrated into iTunes, so we should have that up shortly. We'll give you guys an update in that Telegram group when that is live. Today we're going to go over a couple things. We've got the YouTube comments obviously to go over from the community. We have the staking rewards that we want to talk about with the quarterly rewards that we're receiving. Mike's going to go a little bit over that. Our BVC partnership, a Binance trading competition, and integration into dappreview.com and what's to come. So we're excited about this episode. Thank you guys for tuning in. As always, like, subscribe, comment on the video, and I guess, let's get to it.
Ready to roll?
Yeah, so we'll hit the first couple comments here for today. Actually, no, wait. We wanted to talk about the staking rewards that we paid out the last 7 days and all time, correct?
We'll tease that for the next episode.
Oh, we'll tease
I'm getting
okay.
the updated numbers from Connor.
Okay.
So next
Perfect.
time.
All right, so next time, look, we want to continue to increasingly make these podcasts increasingly better. So a couple of the things that we want to touch on as far as our content goes, these are going to be released. These podcast episodes are going to be released every Wednesday. The weekly update's going to be released on Monday. So just have that in mind. And then on every episode, we're going to start with the amount of rewards that we are giving to the community, correct?
Yep.
Via those staking rewards. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
And alongside that as well, if you go on our website, you look at our white paper, we have breakdowns of how we're spending the rewards for the IOST ecosystem. We're in the process of setting up specific wallets so that you guys can keep track, right? Make sure we're not spending money going to Bermuda or doing any nonsense, right? So we want to be as transparent as possible. Make sure that if you guys are giving us your loyal votes, that you know exactly what we're doing with all of those votes, all of those rewards.
When are we going to Bermuda?
Yeah, why are we not going to Bermuda?
Not with the, we'll go otherwise, but not with voter rewards. That's messed up, man.
All right.
How dare you?
Gotcha. All right, so we're going to get into the first couple of comments on the YouTube channel. It is Dmitry talking to the mic. That was from Evan Schindler, one of our good buddies.
Hi,
so
yes.
Thank you for that comment. Dmitry, I think, is set up nicely this time. The second comment is going to be every wallet will need a fiat off-ramp to be competitive, at least so long as rent, utilities, and food cannot be paid directly in BTC or other tokens. What do you guys think about that? Where did that comment come from specifically? What were we talking about on the last episode?
Maybe we were talking about the stablecoin
Yes.
for IOST. And we talked about the fact that you need that for hedging. Maybe he's coming from that side.
But
Yeah, I think we were talking about the dApps too, right? How the dApps were paying out in their token, but also normal people every day aren't just going to receive a token and know what the hell to do with it
Oh, right.
without a fiat off ramp. So I think that's a good point.
100%. I mean, yeah, you've got to, for mass adoption, it has to be easy. It has to make sense. And if everybody, for the most part, is dealing in fiat, even if you're the most hardcore crypto person, right? Maybe you made a lot of Bitcoin, you can buy a Lambo with Bitcoin, but at some of those select car dealerships, but you're not paying rent with Bitcoin, right? It's a good point. If you want to have the option to fully migrate off of, this is obviously down the road, right? Way down the road. Fully migrate off of a government-controlled currency to your quote-unquote global currency of say a Bitcoin. Yeah, everything that you want to spend your money for, right? Just be it a simple payment solution or rent or whatever, all of that's going to have to be integrated. So
Gotcha.
that makes sense, right? You've got to have it. I think a lot of these apps are poised to have that, though. If you look at the example we always use is Burmy, right? Where if you create a Burmy account, right, you email, password, all that fun stuff, you're earning Burm tokens immediately. Where if they can integrate that fiat on and off ramp within the app, everything on kind of the blockchain side of things can just happen behind the scenes, right? Where it looks and feels just like a normal application. The difference, of course, is that there's that incentive layer where they can earn Berm tokens to, say something is bullish or bearish, or for every video that they watch or whatever. But the comment's right. Who mentioned the comment?
The comment came from Free M Ocean. So that is
claps for him. Yeah, it's huge. It's got to be had. We have to have the fiat on. Right?
Another idea is that if, let's say, you don't want to sell the token for fiat, what you could do is maybe work with the lending platforms where you can just put up the IOST that you have and get the cash out. That's another possible solution as well.
Right.
That's cool. Yeah, I know. I think you know altcoin Sarah, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So she had a post like 2 days ago on Twitter that came up on my timeline. She said, "Why would anyone choose fiat over BTC?" And I'm like, "Well, because I have to live."
yeah. I saw that.
Yeah, but that's a great point. All great points. We'll move on to the next one. We had a couple congratulations on the podcast. So thank you for that. A couple names that we kind of went through. Still not kind of liking the names that we're getting, so we're gonna keep that open. But guys, keep sending it in. And then Nazir actually had. Do you want to read that comment, or do you want me to read it?
Read the comment.
Okay,
yeah.
So it says, for a beer, try Kettlehead out of Tilton, New Hampshire. Quest or Nunchuck are New England IPAs that are fire. I'll deliver myself. LOL.
I'm gonna hold him to that to deliver the beer. If you bring it, we'll tap it, man. I mentioned that in the comment. I looked up Kettlehead Brewing. Looks awesome. Big IPA fans over here. We're obviously drinking dark beer, but we do not discriminate. That's for sure. Absolutely. So they've got some cool stuff, man. They got a triple IPA, Lumberjack Latte. It's a brown ale brewed with sea salt and lactose, aged in maple bourbon barrels with cold brew coffee. Yeah, send that through for sure.
Triple IPA is what I'm looking for.
11%. Yeah, nice and boozy. So, any other beer suggestions? We need an additional tap there. Unfortunately, we can't order this. So, unless you deliver it, we'll tap that. But like I said on the last podcast, anybody who comes up with the name that we end up using, obviously right now it's called the IOST Podcast, so you've got to do better than that. And then anybody who comes up with the next beer that we tap, swag is coming your way. So keep that in mind.
Cool. Awesome. Well, we'll get on to the body of our podcast here. We're going to talk about StakingRewards.com and where kind of IOST finds itself on that list, which is absolutely at the top. Now, this is kind of just I don't know much about StakingRewards.com. I don't know how long it's been around, but essentially what it does is take all of the different coins that allow, or different platforms that essentially allow you to stake and earn rewards, and kind of ranks them, not arbitrarily, but a little bit subjectively, but also they give the staking yield, which is important. So it says up to this point, 25% APR, correct, on your stake, which actually puts it up right at the top. Definitely the biggest coin that's up there. I think the ones that are around it are Pundi, Decred, Komodo, Ontology, all of these ones that people know, but not as big as IOST, of course.
Yeah, definitely, especially at like the credibility level that IOST has. There's some others on here. Looks like one called Live Peer is giving away like 160%. I don't know what that is, but it's awesome to see as the mainnet has launched, a lot of these sites start to give it its credibility, right? Basically showcase the financial incentive layer here that IOST is giving, not just nodes, not just dApps, but your voters as well. So if you're out there, it's a bear market, right? You're looking to kind of stake what you have in order to gain some money back. It's pretty clear that IOST is a good competitor in that field.
Plus, Live Peer has a moderate risk level based on based on Staking Rewards rating compared to IOST, which is stable.
Yeah,
stable. Okay.
If you can't tell over audio that Dimitri's obviously being sarcastic, he had a problem with the risk, subjective risk ratings that they have here. Why do you have a problem with that?
Well, I mean, I didn't really look into actually how they calculate the risk, but honestly, really calculating risk for coins is kind of just formulating an opinion rather than actually like having a calculation like a financial calculation that we do in finance, let's say, for example, to calculate risk.
Right.
So it's kind of, you know, when I look at this all the time, you know, it makes me feel like, well, where do you get this from? You know,
Gotcha.
is it just like some expert analyst who sits there and just formulates an opinion based on certain things that are happening, or, you know, what's involved there? You know,
Because if you look at this relative to traditional bonds or other, you know, precious metals or whatever, like this is obviously the highest risk.
Yeah.
So they should all be high risk, you know.
It's in relation to each other.
In relation, yeah. And then when you get to that point, per Dimitri's points, it's kind of like, well, I guess, you know, I mean, what's the difference between IOST's risk level and Pundi's risk level? It kind of comes down to like, well, which project do you think is going to be around in 3 years more, you know?
All I'm saying is that you should not be basing any type of decisions based on that risk sentiment that is, you see that somewhere, you know, like if it's a stable, you know, or low risk, you know, I would, you know, be very cautious about that.
Yeah,
absolutely. I'm in a couple Telegram groups of these dApps, and those, like, you would need to expect that these are these fringe kind of investments that you're trying to make are super risky. And so you're in these Telegram groups and people wonder why they lost their ass on an EOST app that went up for, you know, 2 months straight, and then now they have nothing. Not nothing, but you get my point.
Yeah.
Well, dude, come on. Like, all of it's going to be risky, to your point. So
I wonder how many like legal issues are these, like you know, things that can get into if, like, let's say a place advertises a low risk coin or whatever, and then somebody gets burned, and then they're like, wait, you said it was low risk, you know, what is the deal there? So I hope they have a good legal team.
One of the magic words is our friend Zach Lee would say is that nothing's guaranteed, right? So it's like, this is, you know, very unlikely to default or whatever, but it's never guaranteed kind of deal.
We should have him on a podcast.
Yes. For the viewers at home, who is Zach Lee? Because he hasn't been on the podcast, obviously. We haven't really talked about him too much.
He was on ICO podcast back in the day.
A little while ago,
with me,
yeah. Who is Zach Lee?
The mysterious Zach Lee.
The man, the legend.
So Zach Lee's on the Sutler Ventures team. He's a founding partner along with myself. He's based out of Dallas for us. He comes from a similar Forex background as Dimitri. I think we
worked together.
Yeah, you guys worked together. Pretty sure he did. Didn't he? Was he better than you at the job?
I taught him. I was training him.
I see. No, but he's a great dude. We'll get him on the podcast at some point. He's one of the Sutler Ventures team members. Another one that, just like Dimitri, brings that really, you know, expert level, kind of more traditional financial background, which, as many would agree, is needed in the cryptocurrency space, especially as we continue to grow. So shout out Zach in Dallas.
Yeah, Zach's kind of a wonder kid, man. Like, he's out. You talk to him, you're like, something's going on behind there that I don't have.
Right. Definitely, man. Yeah, definitely. So
along with those staking rewards that we talked about, one thing that's not talked about often is the quarterly rewards that come from contribution to the system. This means 2 nodes from the IOST. Would you say team? How would you exactly say that?
So, as a recap, there are essentially 2 broad categories from where all of the rewards are coming from, right? Be they the rewards for nodes or for voters. The first is a collection of 420 million IOST that comes from the IOST Ecosystem Fund, right? So this is a separate fund that has been set aside where IOST exists, right? If you there's certainly a wallet address. You could take a look at it. And then on the other side, there's another 420 million IOST that comes from token issuance, right? Or what people would call inflation, right? So I think that inflation number this year is set at 4 or 5%, right? And obviously the IOST ecosystem fund is set at 420 million tokens. So the thought as we go, essentially, and this is the case for most projects, is that level of inflation will decrease, right? So the inflation itself is deflationary. Yeah. So, you know, after the first year, instead of 420 million IOST from the ecosystem fund, maybe there's 350, right? Instead of a 4 or 5% inflation, maybe it's a 3 or 4%, right? So that continues to decrease, hoping and understanding that at that point, the IOST network will have grown. The price will have appreciated, right? So just because the number of tokens that are being rewarded are less, doesn't necessarily mean that from, a fiat basis standpoint, nodes or voters or anybody are earning less rewards. And obviously, right, if you're in IOST at this point, mainnet has launched. If you were in before, probably even a few months from now or so, if you're still in it, you're getting into it at a earlier time. The price is less than a penny. So this is only, those rewards are only going to become more valuable, even though they are deflationary in some sense. So those are the two broad categories you have. And then past that, essentially, there are two kind of subcategories. There are rewards that happen on a daily basis and rewards that happen on a quarterly basis, right? So rewards that are paid daily, every 24 hours, where the node that you're voting for has to go in and they have to claim the rewards so that you get the rewards. So like we said on the last podcast, if you're not getting rewards, don't blow up Telegram. It's not necessarily a problem with IOST. It's likely a problem with the node that you voted for claiming their rewards, right? You might notice you get them every few days or every week. We've got it automated, so you're getting them every 24 hours, 100%. So on those daily rewards, those are paid based on the share of votes that node received from voters, and the number of blocks that node produced, right? So essentially the more votes you have, the more rewards you're going to get. But then also on top of that, let's say, top number one, Huobi, right? They have the most votes, but their node setup is finicky and they're only producing blocks half the time, right? They're going to be negatively incentivized by that through the rewards, through the survey setup as well, to make sure that there are no missed blocks on the protocol. So that happens daily. Per Q's point, on the quarterly rewards, and this came out, let's see here. This came out on March 25th. So this came out yesterday. So this is newer. Yesterday, as of today, Tuesday, we're recording the podcast. Quarterly, the votes are broken down, again, in two ways. The share of votes that a node receives from voters, right? So that's, of the 420 million, that's 210 million IOST. And then also the contributions that the node made scored by the IOST Foundation.
And that's the point that we want to talk about right now.
Exactly, yeah. So that 210 million, those 25% of the total rewards, those are distributed on that quarterly basis. And we have a call with Ben Waters, the head of international markets for IOST, just about every 2 weeks. And an interesting thing he brought up to me, and you'll see him in Telegram here and there, along with Jimmy and some of the other team members, is that in this hypothetical scenario that I'm going to present, let's assume there are two different nodes, right? There's one node that's top three. They've got a ton of votes. Obviously they're earning high daily rewards based on those votes. Let's assume they're producing blocks. Then the other person in this hypothetical scenario, let's say they're a very small node. They have just barely the minimum of 2.1 million IOST. And you as a voter, maybe you have 1.5 million IOST, right? So let's say, for example, you designate that 1.5 million to that small node. They now have 3.6 million, or maybe you helped them get in, right? Maybe they only had 600,000. You gave them your 1.5 million IOST. So now you're a significant contributor for their node. On the quarterly basis, based on contribution, the way that it works is that there are 5 tiers, right? So 5 tiers or 5 tranches. That the top tranche gets the most IOST. So it's a ton of IOST. It's all broken down in this article and otherwise, where any nodes that fall into that top 20% based on their contribution to the ecosystem, not based on how many votes they have, not based on how much block production, but based on contribution to the ecosystem. That could be content and marketing for IOST.
Yep.
It could be bringing dApps over to the platform. It could be bringing other resources like investors, whatever it might be, right?
I've got the 5 here. It's content creation and promotion, dApps, integrations, events, meetups, hackathons, and community building.
Boom. Beautiful. So 5 things there, right, that each node is essentially judged on. Back to this hypothetical scenario, right? Let's say you as that voter, you vote your 1.5 million IOST to the small node. Let's say the small node, maybe they don't have a ton of votes, but they just kill it on the contribution front, right? They're hosting events, meetups, hackathons. They've got all sorts of content coming out. Maybe they're a DApp and you know, they know a ton of developers and bring them over to build dApps on the platform. And then, you know, that top 3 node doesn't really do much, right? They kind of bring in the votes from their users, maybe they're an exchange or otherwise, and they don't really they don't have a lot of contribution happening. Based on the breakdown of the quarterly contribution rewards under this hypothetical scenario that Ben, you know, gave me, that voter could actually earn significantly more rewards by voting for the smaller node who contributed, you know, enough to be in that top tier versus voting for the top 1, 2, or 3 node who hasn't contributed anything and is in the bottom 4th or 5th tier. Because the bottom 5th tier, I think they might get like maybe like a million or 5 million split among all those nodes for the bottom 5th tier. So the point is, right, in this long-winded hypothetical scenario, is that your vote not only counts to certainly get block producers elected, get nodes elected, but it counts for you too, right? A large majority of the way that you vote should be based on how you see that node contributing. Because at the end of the day,
that's what matters.
Every quarter, that's where the largest chunk, you know, of rewards is going to end up coming back to you. Especially if, you know, there is a scenario here where you are a majority of the votes voted towards one of those smaller nodes. Yeah. Right. So hopefully that wasn't too confusing. It was all over the place. We've been drinking, but hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. I know Sutler Ventures is obviously like top 10, top 15 node. So I'm viewing this from another perspective, but it gives the smaller nodes and someone who maybe is just starting, really just very small, basically just got elected, it gives them incentivization to contribute to the ecosystem rather than say, God, I'm never going to be, you know, a top 50 node. None of this is ever going to happen. So why would I host events? Why would I put out this stuff? Why would I, you know, develop a DApp? It actually incentivizes the smaller nodes, and I love that. The only thing that I have an issue there is kind of the subjectivity. It's always this balance between, you know, in blockchain right now, it's this balance between centralization and decentralization, right? And that decentralizes it a little bit. It takes it away from, you know, something that we see on EOS where all of these votes are going towards top 5, top 10 block producers. But that subjectivity of saying, hey, these are in tier 1, these are tier 2, that's where, you know, the balance needs to be played.
Yeah, it could definitely get tricky there, right? And that's really where the IOST Foundation comes in. And essentially, you know, if you go deeper into the way that works, they break the nodes down into categories as well. So some nodes are obviously dApps, some are exchanges, some are wallets, some are VCs like us. Others are, you know, just general kind of enthusiasts, right? So they break them down so that in this case, you know, the top tier isn't all dApps, right? Or the top tier isn't all exchanges or all wallets, right? They make sure that everybody's kind of equally represented there so that if, say, a certain initiative from one node kind of takes longer, that is still understood, that is still rewarded versus a DApp or somebody who you know, they can kind of hammer out things quicker. So you know, talking to Ben about it, seeing what IOST has put out, and now seeing the world of IOST past mainnet launch, it's always interesting to kind of see that, like you said, that balance between centralization and decentralization, right? I think everybody would agree to some degree that in order for a blockchain project or a protocol to make it to the mainstream, there has to be some sort of centralized aspect to it in the form of, say, like a team that's working towards it, right? Because otherwise, you know, you end up with kind of this, oftentimes this centralization within the decentralization in the form of cartels or nodes that control the whole network. So there has to be some period of time, and I know this is what IOST is working for, some period of time where things can kind of run smoothly before you just release it to the world, you know. So it'll be interesting.
I think the Ethereum community is probably the most pro decentralization, and they still deal with the aspects of, hey, we're kind of at the beck and call of what's going on with Vitalik, right? Because like okay, yeah, you could fork it, but as one of our colleagues Pete said, that's kind of like saying that you can jump off the boat, you know, and start your own little boat and go whatever way you're going, but like who's going to actually jump off of this big boat going a certain direction? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
If the captain says we're going this way. So yeah, I mean that's a huge issue. You got anything, Dima?
No, I was just looking at the dApps.
Okay.
The dApps.
Yeah.
You're looking at the
Transaction
dApps.
volume.
You're going on to the next segment. We're not even there yet, man.
Oh wow.
He's a transaction guy, you know, traditional finance.
True.
No, but I mean those quarterly rewards are important. You know, the reason we're bringing it up is because essentially the first week of April, the 1st to the 7th, is when these nodes are going to be submitting their proposal, right? Their kind of checklist of, hey, these are all the things I've done over the last 3 months before mainnet, shortly here after mainnet. So we'll certainly, you know, let you guys know what tier we end up in, right? So that you guys are fully knowledgeable, and take a look, right? If you're voting for 4, 5, 6, 7 different nodes, and half of them get in that first or second tier and the other half get in that fourth or fifth tier, you know, take a look, kind of recap back. They have a Telegram, whatever, be it us or anyone else. Ask what the plan is, right? What are they doing to you know, certainly help the IOST ecosystem, but earn rewards for you too, right? And the beauty of this is because it happens on a quarterly basis, you as a voter with this power now, whether you have 100,000 IOST or 10,000 or 1.5, right? Every vote counts. You know, you can really push that towards the nodes where it's going to make a difference and you're going to get the most rewards every quarter.
Right.
Got it. So as far as a voter, we got to go to a break really quick, but one quick question. As far as a voter, like April 7th or whenever they say, hey, these are the tiers and they give the payout, is that voter just going to see a large chunk of rewards come into him that day, or how is that going to work?
I would think so. Obviously, we haven't seen it yet, but I would think that's the way that it's going to work. I would be surprised if IOST kind of trickled them out.
Okay.
Right. So yeah, I would guess it's kind of a full chunk. You know, you wake up the next day. You know, if your nodes are in the top tier, boom. You know, you've got some nice IOST there. You go and you hit claim through BIS or whatnot, and it's looking good. So.
Okay. All right, cool. So the next part of the podcast is going to be the BVC partnership announcement that we had. We're going to kind of delve in there, the Binance trading competition, and the dApp review integration. So we'll see you after the break. All right, everybody, we're back. We're going to jump into the BVC partnership announcement that we obviously announced, I think, a week ago at this point now. Really excited about this announcement. Really excited about them coming into the IOST ecosystem and everything they bring along with them. So if you could, you know, Mike, if you could talk about what BVC brings to IOST and why you chose BVC specifically.
Definitely. So we've worked with BVC, which stands for the Block Venture Coalition. You can check them out. It's just blockventurecoalition.com. We work with them for a little bit through ICO Alert, consulting and advisory firm that we run, where essentially they manage a coalition of venture capital firms and universities across the United States and elsewhere. They've worked with Neo Global Capital on the Neo blockchain. They have existing ties throughout Asia. Like I said, obviously the US is big, but they are two young gentlemen like ourselves who absolutely fell in love with crypto. And as we were working with them, we obviously pitched them on IOST and, you know, the benefits that we're seeing with IOST. And they were very interested in joining the team, right? Running a node, helping out the ecosystem. And we took the opportunity to them. They decided that partnering with us was the best way to do it. And essentially, they are going to, down the road here, be one of many avenues that developers or dApps or third parties who are looking to build on IOST can come to us and have access to, right? So if you go to our website, sutlerventures.com, you'll see a ton of CTAs where we're like, let's work together, right? Because we want to hear from you guys. We want to hear from the dApps and the third parties and the developers and enthusiasts and all the different folks that are blooming in IOST right now. And having BVC, who comes on now really as a team member of Sutler Ventures, we now have access, and we'll have continued access with them and others to their coalition, right? To these universities, to these venture capital firms. And if you kind of look at BVC as the first announcement in context to what Sutler Ventures wants to do, what our overall plan is, they are the first of many of these coalitions or funds or general resources that we want to bring to the ecosystem, where our plan is, and we've been working on this with IOST for, since before mainnet now. Our plan is essentially to line up the necessary quote unquote infrastructure partners for IOST first, right? So BVC is a big announcement. They're a great partner. They're fantastic at events, especially at universities. Right. They have access to these venture capital firms. But, if you want to sit at the table with these folks, you really need to be buttoned up, right? You need to be somebody who has a DApp probably with some existing user base. You've built a little bit here or there. It's a promising project. So in order to get there for IOST, we onboard and assist IOST in onboarding these infrastructure partners. So these infrastructure partners are wallets, right, which we've helped with. Like I said in the weekly update, Ledger and Trezor is coming, right? It's not a distant dream. It's on the timeline, right? It's coming. They're custody providers, right? So let's say, for example, a crypto hedge fund wants to take down some IOST. They want to make a $2 million investment in IOST. Generally, they don't hold their own tokens, right? They look to a custody provider like a Prime Trust or BitGo or one of these massive custodial firms to hold their tokens, because there's too much risk that someone internally steals them or from hacking or otherwise, especially if you're pulling down $2 million worth of a token.
So $2 million in a Trezor, yeah, okay.
Yeah, exactly, right? If the janitor sweeps that into the trash can, it's bad news. So custody providers is one, right? Payment solutions, I know, has been a focus on the back end from the IOST team. Lending is another big one that we mentioned earlier. Staking, right? All these different ways for your crypto focused financial firms, be they funds or venture capital companies or whatever, right? But then also your traditional financial firms, right? Where we're starting to move towards this intersection of traditional finance and crypto, and there's some good and there's some bad there, but being able to bring those resources to IOST, we have to make sure that infrastructure is there, right? Because that theoretical hedge fund might want to drop $2 million in IOST, but if there's nobody to custody the IOST for them, they're not going to be able to do it. So that's the first step, right? If you think about Sutler Ventures, 2-3-year plan here, the first step, and like I said, we're working on this with IOST already, as are you guys, is to bring those partners on first. Second step, once we have those infrastructure partners on, then we access a lot of these funds, these various resources, namely the financial resources, through partnerships like the Block Venture Coalition, right, where first we introduce IOST, right? We say, hey, here's a protocol. Mainnet's been around for 6 months or 8 months or 12 months. Look at all this ecosystem activity. There's all these dApps building on it. They have more users than Ethos and Tron.
Look at all this stuff.
Look at all this beautiful stuff, right? Oh, by the way, you can earn 20-25%, whatever it is, on the money that you invest. Which for a hedge fund, 25% is pretty damn good, right? Yeah. Especially if you're looking at a 3, 5, 7 year, average return. So we go there, right? We introduce them to the protocol itself, right? The blockchain itself, where all this value is being accrued through all the hard work of all the nodes, all the growth of the users and the holders, and all the active users on dApps as we grow. And then past that, right? Now that IOST has been introduced, now we have partners, be it through the Block Venture Coalition or otherwise, who are comfortable with IOST, right? They know who the team is. Obviously, the team has seen really strong institutional investment already from the likes of Matrix Partners and Sequoia Capital China and all these really big crypto players. Now that they're comfortable with IOST and the team, now they start to explore some of those more application layer projects, right? dApps, third parties, your pick and shovel companies within IOST. And it might seem kind of like a longer timeline if it's 12 months or 18 months or 2-3 years, but in order to get there, this is what it takes, right? ETH is kind of there. They have some more some bigger scale, kind of more mainstream projects building on their protocol.
Mover,
yeah, but they've been around for 4+ years at this point now. So it takes time, right? And that's what we're working on. And the Block Venture Coalition as the first signal of these really prominent folks in the crypto space seeing IOST, seeing the clout that it has already, and seeing the potential for growth is really exciting, which is why we pushed it out, why we got it done. The universities are another aspect we're going to be working with. So as you can tell, we're super excited about it. I hope you guys are too. There's certainly more to come on that front.
Things tend to move fairly quickly in crypto too. When we were looking at big thing that was coming around about institutional investors getting into the game, right? You had custodial companies coming out, right away, pushing out their solutions quickly so they can accommodate those type of clients or investors. So to your point, you're saying that it's not going to be as quick, but in crypto we know that a month is really like a year.
Yeah.
So things tend to move fairly quickly, so I'm looking forward to it and excited to see what's
So what's your prediction for Wall Street getting into crypto, just in a broad
general
timeline?
point?
Hey man, just give us ETF.
ETF?
Yeah, once the ETFs get rolling, then we'll have some serious players getting into it. It's gonna happen. Obviously, so many things are moving along in the right direction right now. So I see, within 12 months or so.
Yeah. The one shorter term thing I'm looking for is when backed or however you say it, BAKKT from the Intercontinental Exchange, like they were supposed to launch in February and then it was March and now it's like May, like they haven't really hammered down a launch, which, I don't blame them either, right? Like we're in the middle of a bear market. If they can catch it on stronger hype, then their business is going to be bigger. I know they're also waiting on some regulatory approvals, right. So maybe it's that, but that's a big short-term thing for me where we're saying, okay, here is a major player, who is officially in the space. Fidelity is another one.
Gotcha.
Right. Yeah. And Fidelity has apparently the small section of their business that's separate from Fidelity itself, right? That's what it was. Yeah. Which is it's not really a Fidelity. It's like a small fund that's kind of under their umbrella or whatnot.
Fidelity Digital Assets or something.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Yeah. Was that a venture? I remember seeing that. I don't know where we saw that, but it was like a venture. Some sort of venture fund or something.
Yeah.
Was it a venture fund?
Yeah, it's a venture. Yeah.
So speaking of a big player, but in the crypto space, Binance obviously is making a name for itself. It's what we looked at it today because I had done a trade maybe a year ago in 2017 when I was buying up these altcoins, and the BNB that I didn't know I had obviously is at all-time highs right now. One of the only probably altcoins that's hitting all-time highs.
That's usually how the best trades work out, is when you place a trade and you forget about it.
Really?
Yeah, I've had so many clients in the past that I've worked with in FX that actually forgot that they put on that trade and logged back in a year after, and suddenly they made a huge chunk of money.
Nice.
And then they're like, "Wait, can I close this position and get the money out?" And I'm like, "Yeah, absolutely,
that's how it works."
But what you should do is actually increase your investment and put on more trades because you're a very good trader.
right.
Nice tricks of the trade there.
There you go. Yeah.
Nice. So Binance has actually just announced their IOST trading competition, which I don't know. Do you have the details in front of you by any chance?
Yeah, so it's the trading competition is for IOST, and they're giving out 10,000 in BNB for the winner.
Okay, 10,000 BNB at $16.
Yeah.
A BNB is what?
Quick math, 160K, right?
Something like that. Yeah.
$160,000, US dollars.
Yeah.
Cool.
So
that's pretty good.
For a trading competition to win $160,000 is that's significant, especially in a bear market. You can pay yourself for 2 years with that at least.
This obviously doesn't happen in traditional markets, right? The trading competitions. Do they have it? Do these things exist?
They do. For example, in my company for FX, we did have something like this.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's not set up on obviously institutional level, it's not going to do it. It's more for retail traders.
Yep.
You know, they'll have anywhere from like let's say a very small account that has, you know, maybe under $1,000 in it, that who can rack it up, you know, as high as possible for within a certain window, or you have a practice account, you know, let's say a simulation, right, where you trade that,
see who can make.
Yeah,
I actually like that.
and then from there you basically actually there are two options from there. Either you get just the payout, or you get a payout and you get to be one of the traders on the fund. So that's actually how some hedge funds were picking some of the traders. They would like, you know, they would set up this practice account or whatever, you know, and let them trade and whatnot, and then see whoever wins. Then you get you know, a portion to manage money basically, or a capital to manage for the fund.
So within crypto, what does this do for IOST? For Binance having a, you know, trading competition, what does that do for IOST?
So one thing actually important to point out also is that Binance introduced IOST pairing for BNB and Tether as well. So I think that aligns together for them to just kind of encourage people to trade.
Got it.
You know, those pairs. But yeah, it's essentially more exposure and kind of moving forward for IOST to have more pairs to kind of trade and hedge or whatnot, you know.
It's, I mean, movement. And as we were talking about earlier today, I think it was Binance, I would argue, is probably the most prominent company in crypto right now. So anytime you're running anything with Binance, as a project who's newer on the scene, especially in mainnet, that's good, right? You're getting in front of more traders, more investors, more speculators there than you are on any other exchange, right? There was a report that came out from Bitwise Invest, which is I can't remember. I'm not sure if they're doing custody or they're doing something, you know, on that kind of traditional finance plus crypto fringe that we talked about. And they came out with something that basically said 90 to 95% of trade volumes are BS, right? They're wash trading. They named a handful of exchanges in particular.
Was that like a year ago? I think I remember that one.
This one just came out. This one just came out.
Okay.
Yeah, Bitwise Invest. Check it out. You know, I think everybody to some degree was kind of
they knew that
there was some fake trading going, but they do a really good job of showing how they're able to prove, or at least, you know, kind of make like educated assumptions on this volume being fake. They break it all down in that report, and the reason I bring it up is because Binance, from a real trading volume standpoint, was leaps and bounds ahead of everybody else, right? I think the reported daily volume for crypto was like 6 billion. In the actual volume that they came to in this report, the report they were sending in for an ETF, which is always good. So they're sending it, you know, in for that application. That final number they came to was like 270 million or 267 million. So like I said, 90,
not far off.
Yeah, 90 to 95% fake trading, wash trading, whatever you want to call it. And of that, you know, 260, 270 number, Binance had like 110 million. Right? Wow. So they had almost 50% of the total global trade volume, with, you know, like Coinbase or Bitfinex or somebody coming in second with like 35 million. Right. So, you know, it's not a Binance launch pad. You know, I think we might still see that. We'll see. Yeah. But like I said, anytime you're doing something with Binance, understanding where they're at in the bear market, where they were in the bull market, where they're going to be in the future, is great for adoption.
So I've just looked up the details for that competition. So it's actually it's running until March 28th. So by the time this podcast comes out, there'll be 1 day left.
Yeah.
And it's based on actually the trading volume on IOST. So if you trade the most volume on IOST, you're the one who wins.
Got it.
Oh, so it's only trading volume.
Right, yeah, it's the trading volume. So it's interesting how it goes with your piece.
Yeah. Is that usually botted, or for people that are going to win, is that usually botted?
I mean, I really don't know, but I can see, you know, we can.
Okay.
It also depends on your wallet.
Gotcha.
You know,
okay.
if you're,
I wonder what kind of like precautions, you know, any that
Yeah.
Binance has in terms of like if they can detect a certain
Yeah.
like trading behavior, because in FX we had that, you know, when we could see on certain accounts where they're using an algo, because the behavior is very predictable, right? And you can definitely tell if it's an algo or not. You know?
Yeah, I mean, the point in bringing it up, listen, if all power to you if you can win this competition. The point in bringing it up is to talk about how IOST is making its way into the cryptocurrency news and ecosystem and things like that. But if you can win it, go ahead and win it.
Yeah.
One of the things that Binance did a real good job before we move on is like creating an asset and also having a currency attached, which I know I talk about this after hearing Eric Faust talk about it over and over on our podcast.
On the roundtable,
yeah. They did a great job of having an asset and then having a currency attached, whereas opposed to when you would create an ICO, it was, hey, create that token first, create the currency first, and then we'll create the assets later, which is totally ass backwards. Some people can follow through on that by getting funding, you know, but most of the time what you saw was they just created a currency, they just created this money, and, you know, never created
the only asset that comes out is hope.
Yeah.
A lot of hopium, not a lot of like decentralized Facebook coming out of that. Yeah.
True. All right. So the next thing next and last thing that's coming out of the news for IOST, at least this week up to this point, is the integration into dappreview.com. So it's going to be it's dap.review. And it's going to be, a lot of you know DAP Radar, DAP.com. It's basically these DAP analytics where you can look at it, explore, see the 24-hour users, 24-hour transactions. Funny that we're talking about volume and transactions, because I think a lot of that, you know, on these DAP radars can be faked as well.
Right.
I think we're dealing with that as well. But as far as IOST is concerned, Endless Game, which just ported over to IOST, so they have now EOS and IOST that they're running on, actually peaked at, I believe, number 2 or 3 in a 24-hour time frame as far as number of IOST or the volume that was transacted.
Yeah, right now it's showing that 24-hour volume is $500,000.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Yeah, so it's pretty good. It's actually it's funny that the IOST Endless Game is higher than the EOS Endless Game in terms of volume.
True. Yeah. I think still at 7 days, if you go to 7-day volume, it's at number 6 right now, which is still way above Endless Game EOS. I think it got that big, pump from actually just, being one of the first dApps on IOST. What do you think about Endless Game?
One of the cool things, and this isn't necessarily about Endless Game, but perhaps one of the reasons that it's seen a ton of volume really quickly, and this was announced by IOST on Token Pocket. IOST is officially partnered with Token Pocket now, where certainly Token Pocket is a wallet, right? It's essentially a mobile wallet. That is likely what most of you guys are using, if not BIS, for the ability to vote for block producers. The beautiful thing in this new partnership with Token Pocket is that, yes, you can own your own private keys. Yes, you can, send and store your IOST on this wallet. But yes, you can vote for block producers. But now, directly through that wallet, it appears that you can actually go and play Endless Game as well. Saw that on Q's phone.
Yeah.
It's kind of a one-stop shop, right? So if I'm somebody, who's working a normal job, not like us, right? Who, maybe I'm on the subway or I'm on the tram or whatever, and I just want to do something really quick. I'm not gonna have my computer, right? Like I'm not gonna
switch tokens around, just so you can play again.
If I have it mobily there, where on one place I can certainly check the price of the tokens, right? See how many I have, maybe see how many that I've earned from the block producer that day, maybe learn a little bit more about the block producers. Now I can play dApps. That's only going to increase adoption. That's only going to increase use. So I wonder how much that will have an effect in the future as well, as you look at, say, for example, Endless Game IOST versus EOS, or just IOST dApps versus some of the other protocol dApps.
Mm-hmm. And it's worth mentioning that Token Pocket has a lot of integrations for other protocols. So they've got EOS on there. They've got, I can look on it now. But it's funny, man. This is happening in the gaming world too. And Dimitri, you can talk on this too. Gaming studios are moving more towards mobile because that's where they see the money. So if you're thinking gaming and you're thinking desktop computers, how many people can own a desktop computer as opposed to how many people can, be on a mobile phone.
Right.
It goes the same as like playing desktop. So desktop apps, so you're talking about your MacBook, or you're talking about, whatever Windows laptop that you have. More people do own phones. So they're going to make more UX, UI for mobile, apps.
Yeah.
Yeah, and attracting those users and also selling like, in-game features like skins and so on, it's huge, you know, because the problem is that with the computer games is the fact that like you have to have a computer that actually can support the game, right? And in order to do that, you have to shell out a lot of money, or you have to, build your own and so on. There's that barrier, right? But most people can or a lot more people can get the mobile device, right, that can support those games. So it's the barrier for entry is lower. So I that's why that movement is happening. So I agree.
To the chagrin of all of all of us desktop players, because as they move into these mobile games, the desktop features go away, right? Like the intricacy goes away for more the user friendly, kind of more stale. I don't want to call it stale, but more bland mobile games.
At least for now.
At least for now. Yeah, true. So I looked it up. EOS, BOSS, Ethereum, IOST, ENU, MOAC, and Jingtum are all supported by Token Pocket.
I really love the app, right? Obviously do the bull and the bear thing too. Sometimes I see news there first before I see it on CoinDesk or some of these others, so it's...
I like that they do a TLDR version as well. That's the whole thing behind it is like, read less, know more. So it's like, I love it. It's like small descriptions, and then when you want to read more, obviously you can hit the actual source button. It takes you to the actual source of the website, and you can read the detailed article about it.
Yep, it's a genius idea, and it's a good example. It's one that we always go to. It's one that Jimmy Zhang always goes to of an app that kind of can start out, build a user base, then migrate to the IOST blockchain and build in that all of those crypto incentives, right? Where now you're earning those tokens. I think you can earn up to 10 a day for marking articles as bullish or bearish. And then the way to answer your question, Q, on the price prediction, the closer you get to the price in the following 24 hours or whatever it is for Bitcoin. I think the highest I got was 100 or 200 burn. And they're arbitrarily priced at like 5 cents. It's a decent little bit of money once you kind of add them up there. So I love the app. That's awesome to hear from Ray on that.
Cool. Well, that pretty much gets through all the news that we had for this week. I think, unless you guys had anything else, did anybody have anything else that they wanted to kind of harp on at the end of the podcast?
No, that was my thing that I was holding out towards the end.
Keep the podcast names coming. We're reading every one. We just got to find one that we really like, right? Get creative with it. It doesn't necessarily have to be something IOST or Sutler related. It doesn't have to be called IOST Sutler podcast. Get creative with it. Like I said, we need another beer on tap too. So maybe more of a nationally distributed beer that works really well. Looking at this person who laid the comment down earlier. Of course, if they deliver it and we get a doorbell and it's here, then
free beer. Yeah,
sorry to the suggestions. If you brought it all the way here, it's pretty damn good. You're gonna get the swag.
That's true.
Give me feedback for my mic. Am I speaking to the mic now? Can you hear me clearly?
Absolutely. So like, comment, subscribe to this video, please. Keep a lookout on Telegram this week. We are actually going to do a different format next week for this podcast that we think you guys might like. We also have a lot of cool guests coming up that will be on these podcast episodes. So if you guys want to see anyone specific on, please leave your comment on this video. But otherwise, this was a great episode, fellas.
As always.
Yep.
Cheers.
Cheers.